Okay, so this finishes up the chapter that we started the other day. And again, I kind of like it because it really should be things that you can relate to in either from your other classes and or from internships that you've had, because many of you have used customer relationship management systems, not realizing that that's the term, but to use a Salesforce-like product, right? Many of you have entered in your time data into BU Works to get paid as a student employee. Well, guess what? That's a module of an enterprise resource planning system, right? And so you've used these systems or applications, and so I'm now giving you the correct terms behind it. So, again, it constantly builds off the same theme that we've had. When individual areas in a business had their own systems, and so human resources had a system just to support themselves, and then you had finance, and they had a system to support themselves. There wasn't, collaboration or information sharing. There wasn't a common database, and therefore you had data issues, customer issues, timing issues, efficiency, right? Hence, enterprise resource planning systems were born, and really what that is software that sits above a database, right? A relational database, so that you can share information. And it affects whether it's patient care, restaurant chains, fast foods, those type of things. It applies to all industries. And on the test, there was a question about Toast. Toast is actually a real point of sale software as a service product, which is an ERP for the restaurant business, and it is a vertical or a horizontal application. What would be the correct answer? No. It is vertical, right? So it's targeted for an industry, not for anything else. It's for the restaurant business. Again, customer relationship management, fancy term. We talked about this. It's from birth or lead, right? So somebody goes out, you have a company website, somebody goes out to your website and they do some sort of view, right? There's two ways you can do things. You can drop a cookie, right? A tracking cookie. And so now you know who they are and you can begin to spam them through email to try to get them to convert. Or you can do it, more upfront and ask them to register. Are you interested? They fill in their email address and whatever their basic, right? They haven't done any purchasing yet, but that's a lead. And then it goes through its cycle, right? You want to convert them into a customer, and you're keeping track of all of those transactions. That's what a customer resource management system does for you. In the end, this is pretty important because you want to look at your low value customers, right? And your high value. And you want to keep those high value, meaning the cost per transaction to communicate with them, to offer new services should be less, and therefore you want to maintain. If you have somebody that does an occasional purchase of your good or service, like through Groupon or when it's on sale and it's always discounted, that may not be somebody that you want, right? And if you think about it, how many here have gambled? Anybody remotely go to casinos? Oh, come on, tell the truth. Well, casinos do that, right? They want the high rollers, right? So they keep track of your preferences, how often, how much you bet, how long do you sit at the tables. Why? They want to keep on offering you incentives to bring you back because you spend more per transaction, right? And it's worth it for them to do the marketing. Hotels do that. Airlines, again, pre-COVID, things were a lot different. Now, things are kind of on a hold, but you could, join a frequent flyer club, right? And they would offer you benefits, and they keep track of how often you use those benefits or incentives. That's what a customer relationship management system does, okay? So I use the term applications and modules many times in this class, and they actually mean one and the same, okay? So when we're talking about an enterprise resource planning system, it's made up of many different functional area software, like finance, like HR, like sourcing. Those are called applications, and the book also uses the term modules, right? Generally, the application will be human resources, and underneath it, you'd have subdivisions like training, recruitment, retirement, compensation, benefits. Each of those, go to a functional area in order to support their business. The same with CRM. These are the basics, right? So we have that lead management, and here at Questrom, I'm using Salesforce.com in graduate admissions. I'm also using it now for the new online MBA program. And anytime a student goes to an event, virtual or physical, or visits our website, guess what? They can register or on track in their cookie, and they're in this first bucket here. They're a lead. I want to convert them, right? Because we need the money to, a paying student if they meet the credentials, right? And the rest are pretty self-explanatory, but they're all in one integrated database. The interesting thing about Salesforce.com, and I don't push a particular product, because I don't believe we should teach products, we should teach concepts, but they are #1 in the world marketplace, and they are used in every single industry. And many of the companies that consult, help companies implement, actually recruit at BU. So that's Accenture, that's IBM Blue Wolf, that's PwC, that's Deloitte & Touche, that's KPMG. They all have practices helping clients implement Salesforce.com or upgrade it or enhance it. And that's why I brought the Salesforce.com trails into the class, to give you some exposure, and hopefully at an interview, it gives you kind of an edge compared to some of the other Questrom students, okay? You can continue those badges post the class when you're bored. Not that they're the most thrilling, but the more badges you earn and you make your profile public, then you begin to get recruited. There's an exam you can take, which is Salesforce Admin. I guarantee you, if you pass that exam, you will not have an issue, regardless of your GPA, of getting a job. They're in such demand today, and they pay pretty well. And it's in every single country, right? So it's not just US based. Anyways, enough of that. All right, so again, this seems pretty easy to comprehend, right? It's really a logic map. I want to see my customer loyalty, and I want to do some sort of calculation, right? It will be a score. And how do I do that? These are the basic processes. I get a request, I get the information, right? I'm going to score the customer, and that score continues to improve, as transactions or business is done with them. And think about it. You've heard about, credit score. Like, I don't know if any of you, and I doubt it, have applied for a mortgage, right? But if you apply for a credit card and it's under your income, not your parents', right? You have a credit score. They rank your credit worthiness. And you get marketed generally in your senior year from credit card companies, because as you're approaching graduation, there's an anticipation that you're going to be gainfully employed, right? Hopefully. And so therefore they give you like a $2,000 or $2,500 credit line, right? And as you begin to pay your bills and the whole bit, your score goes up. And the higher your score, the better it is, meaning you get discount on mortgage, credit cards, term and conditions, right? Well, that same concept is applied in the customer relationship management. I am going to score my customers, and that score improves or changes based on their activities that they do. Questions from remote? Okay. So we've talked about ERP a number of times. I really, really want you guys to earmark this particular slide because it's ripe for a final question, right? So you have a central database, and then you have a series of applications or modules to support the basic business, right? In this particular slide, everything's kind of grouped under accounting for finance, but we've talked about what those modules would be, right? General ledger, payables, receivables, more than likely your cash, right? It's really what you need for your balance sheet. Again, this slide kind of is communicating the old before, ERPs came into place, and was really with supply chain management or logistics, right? The whole goal is to make sure supplies are on the shelves or in the store or available online when customers want them. And there shouldn't be any wait, right? Pre-pandemic, I would say that most companies, big companies, had that pretty well tuned, and there's formulas that they use. And it's based on, data that they receive, not information, right? We always get that confused. Data would be the transactions. Information is what we do to those transactions. We do averages, we do patterns, we do cycles, we do sums, right? That's information. COVID kind of threw everything into like a state of panic because it wasn't based on normal behaviors. So people were like running to the grocery store and buying every, Chef Boyardee raviolis and toilet paper and Cheerios. And so there was no way to predict. But if a company is going to survive, they need to take that pandemic information and tune, right? And get more suppliers. We're so dependent on one company, one supplier. You need alternative suppliers. Well, pre-ERP systems, all of that was done manually, right? Or it was done on an Excel spreadsheet or something equivalent to a Microsoft Access, which is single user. And you couldn't look at patterns across the complete functions from raw materials to goods and services. So, like Thanksgiving is coming up, and you want to make sure there's enough turkeys in the store, right? And so you need information from your turkey farms and your poultry farms to feed that availability, right? And to place your orders. And that's what a logistics or supply chain management system does. Inbound is from the turkey farm. Outbound, again, is the customer consuming, buying, receiving. Questions? Okay. So again, supply chains are really important, and if you asked me a year ago, I would have said the new business analytics concentration is going to be the hottest concentration there is here at Questrom. I'm in information systems, but I'm not biased, right? I think information systems goes with everything. The more technical or exposure, the wider you have for applying for internships and jobs, right? There's a certain knowledge worker competency that they're expecting, and the information system concentration gives you that, right? Intro to SQL, a little bit of database work, that type of stuff. Now, because of the pandemic, I would say that operations management, supply chain, Six Sigma is very important, and you're going to begin to see more jobs opening up on that because companies need to tune it. So if you take IS, so you know how to create the formulas, or at least define them so that a programmer can do it, and you understand workflow, process management, process reengineering, supply chain, wow, you're going to be really, really competitive for a job. Not to say that business analytics isn't good, because you're always going to be dealing with data, but some of the specialty skills seem to be now what's being advertised. So what do? Right? You're either going to look at demand planning, so that, again, the whole goal is you get products when you need it, inventory is not sitting in a warehouse, and if it's, perishable, then it's going to rot and your profit goes away. I think the average profit ratio for grocery stores is in single-digit numbers. And so you have a very low margin, and the more you throw away or give away, right, or have to discount, it eats up that 3%, right? So you need high volume, and you really need to tune, although right now they're gouging us on prices, but that being said, you need to tune that. If you're a store like Macy's, right, if you don't tune your demand planning, Black Friday cycles, change of clothing and all that based on seasons, but you don't base it on data and patterns, guess what? TJX, Marshalls, and Home Goods is going to acquire that at a discount, and again, you lose money. All right, so again, earmark this, please. I know we ask questions on upstream and downstream. So upstream, right? It's whatever you need in order to develop the finished good, right? And so it's going to be your raw materials, it's going to be who supplies it, and it's going to be how you get that. And so, again, for a grocery store, my upstream for turkeys is going to be my various poultry farms, right? Because they're my suppliers. And generally, like in produce and stuff like that, you don't have one supplier per produce type. It's a general provision, right? But you have many of those. And then downstream, it's whatever it takes to get the product to your customers. So in the grocery store example, how many of you have used Instashop? What's it? Instashop? Instacart. Anybody? Nobody? Oh, thank you. So Instacart is in fact a downstream, right? It's in some ways logistics. It's getting your grocery goods to your home. Uber Eats, if you think about it, is really a downstream, right? The upstream is the restaurant and your order, and the downstream is, the driver and the process in order to get it to your home or dorm room or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of easy to keep that in mind. Downstream, you're the customer. Upstream, it's the suppliers to the company or provider. You knew I was going to do a Nike. No, I'm not obsessed with Nikes. I just wear them all the time. I think this was in a previous edition of the book, and I kind of liked it because it shows you in a sneaker manufacturing example, what are the upstream, right? So, the sneaker has cloth, it has rubber, what else does it have? Maybe finished shoelaces, inserts for, what? Orthopedics, right? I'm old, thank you very much, Adam. And so all of that is upstream, right? It's getting the raw goods and materials in order for Nike to produce the sneaker that I love and get it to online resources, physical stores, etc. Right? So that's the downstream component. Also, if you're like on Amazon and you buy Nikes there, you take them home, they don't fit, or you don't like the color, or they were used, you don't like the condition, and you send it back, that's also part of the downstream process. So it's order receiving and as well as returns. Push and pull. And again, these part of the slides are additional to the chapter, and so it's really important for you to remember these, or at least go back, right? So look at the example, and I want somebody from remote to give me an example of a push-based model. And I want to look at people. All right, who from remote can give me an example of push-based? You're not remote.
I'm back up.
Oh, Daniel.
Would an example be like from like the last slide, like Nike sneakers, they produce a bunch of stock and then people buy that stock that they make. People buy what's on the shelves.
Okay, so if I were to use that as an example, it would be like I go into DL Warehouse or Shoetown, or is it Zappos or whatever, and it's having a certain number always available per size. And when that goes down from a quantity of 10 or 15, whatever is the appropriate, an automatic reorder is generated. That's a push-based, right? Because you're constantly trying to keep stock available at a certain level. Mary, you had an example?
I was thinking Warby Parker, but I'm not sure if they do like the automatic replenishment.
I'm trying to think of what kind of store is that?
That it's like a glasses store.
Oh, I guarantee you that just about all stores do a push-based model, right? Because otherwise, you would come in and there'd be never a guarantee that what they sell is available for you to purchase, right? There's a certain level they want to keep. So most stores tend to do that. Most online stores do as well. Andrew, you had an example.
I was going to say, any farming products or produce?
Absolutely. Okay. How about a pull-based model? Adam?
Would most like drop shipping operations be considered a pull-based model?
Do that again?
Like the whole like idea of like drop shipping. So like you don't order anything until someone actually orders the product.
Yeah, drop shipping is it's customer driven and it's pull, right? So it's kind of like customization, right? So a good way is push. You need a new computer, right? Your parents finally break down and give you some extra money. There's two approaches you can do. You can go into Best Buy and buy what's ever available, and that's going to be a push base, right? They're going to keep a certain amount available in inventory, right? You walk in, you kind of get what's there. And they have formulas to replenish when it goes down, right? So it's based on stock. Or you can go on to Apple computer site, right? It's not physically in an inventory. They have all the components to put together your configuration, your graphics card, your memory, your storage, right? And the customer is driving it. And that would be a pull-based, okay? So push-based is really based on forecast, data, inventory levels, and setting reorder points. The pull-based is really based on a customer or a business-driven transaction. Think about luxury boats and vehicles, right? They're almost custom-made, and that would be more like a pull-based. Can anybody give me another example of pull-based? Four participants raised their hand. Who raised their hand? Xavier.
I was thinking something like when you order a laptop, but it's like customized, you choose your own parts. So instead of buying like a laptop off the shelf, you'll be customizing your own parts, and they basically put it together for you after you order.
Yes, laptops are a really good example if you're customizing. If you're a gamer, right, you're probably not going to go into Best Buy and buy something off the shelf unless it's such a great deal and you know how to like break it down and add things to it, right? Because then you can go to various stores and get the components. Otherwise, you're going to have it pre-configured to meet your need. Stephanie, you had an example.
Oh, I was thinking like auto repair shops. Like sometimes you bring in the car, like your car first, and then like they do an examination and then they order the parts that they need to fix your car, and then it goes down the line.
Excellent, yes. And so some things are stock items, right? Like fan belts, batteries, and so that would be a push base. They always keep, so many on the shelves are on stock. But wait, your example is actually excellent. There's a specialty, there's electronics, right? And so it takes 3 to 5 days in order to get that. That would be more pull-based. Okay. The bullwhip. Boy, I'm having a little bit of problem today with this mouse. Okay, the bullwhip. No, this isn't, a Sado exercise, right? Anybody know what the bullwhip is? Oh, Andrew.
It's when there's like a shock in the supply stream and it reverberates through and it makes it worse. So it starts small and gets much bigger.
You know what, buddy? I like that so well that you're gonna speak to the world.
Is this set up?
It's on.
A bullwhip is when there's a shock to the supply stream, and because the supply stream has multiple components, it'll have a reverberation effect, sort of like how a bullwhip kind of like starts slow and goes very fast.
Excellent. That's exactly what it is. It's a snap, right? And so something happens that creates like a massive order. How many of you remember when Fitbits first came out a couple of years ago? Or am I too old? Right? And so it came out before the holiday season. They were going, like crazy. And they put in this massive reorder thinking that pace was going to hold up, right? And so all of the forecasting formulas were off. They ended up with this huge surplus. And right after the holiday at Macy's, TJ Maxx, you could get it for about 1/10 of the original price. Because people realized all it was doing was counting your stupid steps, right? So it was kind of like a fad, right? And so you want to sort of smooth that out. That's why we have Groupons. That's why we have Macy's, TJ Maxx, Home Goods, That's why you have Ocean State Job Lot, those type of stores. They're doing exactly what, the reverse is. They're buying the effect of the bullwhip, right? So it's all based on faulty information. And guess what? If companies don't retune their formulas for reordering once the pandemic finally slows down, we're going to have exactly that same issue. We're going to have warehouses full of toilet paper that are going to eventually rot, right? And canned goods that will expire because they needed to go in and tune it. So we have a bullwhip effect right now, right? There's a panic, people are buying, but those formulas need to be adjusted. Otherwise, you're going to see a year from now, let's hope it ends, this enormous amount of surplus because they needed to adjust it, right? And so there's some pretty sophisticated programming going on right now to look at that. And McKinsey, they have this whole practice area focusing in on giving advice to pharmaceuticals and grocery stores and dry goods in order to relook at those formulas because industry experts say we're going to have a bullwhip effect. Questions on bullwhip? Can somebody else give me another example?
This is kind of like
Oh,
to prove. Oh.
speak to the world. I'll use my glove, Tina. Thank you.
This was kind of to prevent the bullwhip effect, but at the beginning of this whole catastrophe that is COVID, Lysol said they weren't going to increase production at all of their Lysol wipes, and that basically they didn't want to have like a glut at the end of this thing, so it was to kind of prevent the bullwhip effect.
Yes, you got it. So, I'm sure you guys can think of other examples. So we're passing the mic around so you don't get sick of my voice. Not that there's too many people here, but I'm going to ask my moderator to take over and start speaking to you guys. Right? You're going to miss me when the class is over. Okay. Now into the book, there's a term that they use, which is EAI. I know there's so many blanking terms in that book, but again, it's meant so that if you don't sell it, you can use it in the future because it really is a primer, right? It's an intro to IS, it's CS 101 and a business wrapped up into one book. All that really is there's like a data warehouse. So I'll give you a good example of an enterprise application integration. Right now, as if you're on campus or coming to campus, as students, faculty, and staff, you need to do testing. If you're in a category 1, you need to do daily reporting, right? So all of those transactions are going into Healthway database. There's splits of it. Students have one, you guys have the online app, we have a web version. So now I've built a link into that information, right? Copied it into what I call warehouse. So it's just a copy of the data for students, faculty, and staff. And we can begin to do summations on the number of missed tests, compliance, and the whole bit, so that we can take action for faculty and staff. If you miss, I think it's 1 test, you get a warning, if the test is greater than 7 days. 2, it gets a progressive discipline. 3, you are terminated, right? So we have a warehouse. We're grabbing all of this data, copying it, pulling it together, right? So that we can take action. And on this lower, so this would be my data warehouse or my copy of my data. And in this particular case, if I make it a BU example, right, I'm getting information from SAP, which is our ERP, and it's really the HR component so that I know faculty and staff ID, rank, title, and the whole bit, right? I also know their cost center, right? Why is that important? Because I need to understand the table of organization. So it's a combination of the general ledger account and some human resource information. For students, the EI interface is really a link into Student Link for exact same information, right? BUID, student rank, and whether or not you said you were going to be on campus or off campus, remote, etc., right? So I grab all of that data and I combine it. It's a relational data set, right? I want tables to talk to each other in order to produce these daily reports and take some action. So that's really an integration, right? I have hooks into other systems to get needed information to take action. Questions on this? This actually is what you would do in a business analytical job. You would be working primarily in this space, doing analysis on data sets, right? It could be marketing and sales, it could be pharmaceutical. Who was I talking to today? A former student, Justin Tang. Sophomore, interested in expanding his business analytics, right? And some of the things that we suggested for him to do is actually in this space. As a directed study, I had 15 students in the spring grab daily information from Johns Hopkins on COVID patterns across, it was actually data across the world. And I asked them using Tableau to start to answer some questions, age, pattern, and obviously, if you're really skilled, you could start to predict, right? You may not be right, but at least you could play with the data and say, what would happen if? That's exactly what they were doing. They were at this layer, right? They didn't touch the primary system. They took data out in order to manipulate and come up with analysis. Questions? All right, so again, this kind of wraps up. You can buy one ERP that contains all of these things, right? Supply chain, manufacturing, customer relationship, human resources, accounting. Or what a lot of companies do is they buy best of what they call breed. So best of accounting, best of CRM, and they use a particular way to make the systems talk to each other, right? So it's different vendors, different software. Any guess on what that term would be? Begins with an A, it's 3 letters. The last is an I. I use it in Questrom tools to integrate my media, which is really Kaltura, so that you can see the lectures with Questrom tools. It allows software to talk to each other. What is it? API, Automated Programming Interface, right? So it's a common set of standards that you can share information. When you use your Kerberos to sign in to a variety of systems, and now you're going to have to use probably Duo Mobile more often, right? That's also an example of an API. So there's lots of best of practice software, and it allows you to use one sign-in in order to get at it, right? Questrom tools, team rooms, student link, etc. Same thing here. Many cases, you're a small company, you want one vendor to provide everything, or you may decide to get specialty software, Salesforce just for CRM, and maybe you're gonna use Oracle Financials for the accounting component. And maybe you're gonna use JD Edwards for the supply chain, right? And you have the systems talk to each other, APIs. I think we're gonna stop here. We're not gonna do the breakout because I think everybody's exhausted. This has been a tough week. You guys had various exams and homework and stuff. We will pick up on the breakout anyways. Again, you know my style, I keep on bringing up the same things over and over. So when we get to the SDLC chapter, Systems Development chapter, we'll actually pick up on some of these concepts again. So I think we can wait. Before we take a break, are there questions? Anything from today? I guess when you guys first hear it, it sounds reasonable, right? But then when you go back to study, now the confusion comes in. So I'm not suggesting tonight it's going to be Halloween, so happy Halloween, be safe and careful. But well before the final exam, you really should relook over the tape and the contents. And if you have any questions, either email me directly or come to office hours, right? Let's continue to build your understanding so when we get to the final, it's not like, oh, I'm learning the material all over. So it becomes part of your natural jargon or speech. Andrew?
Is it more expensive to buy individual applications for like accounting and finance and operations and put it together, or to buy like a package deal?
So Andrew asked, is it more expensive to buy individual applications for accounting, customer relationship management, supply chain, etc.? Or is it better to buy one vendor solution so you're dealing only with, one product? There's pros and cons on either way. So I'll give you an example at BU. So I started here in 1989, and because I had tons of experience in enterprise resource planning, they asked me to serve on a committee. And they were replacing, at that time, whatever it's individual finance, human resource, and whatever systems, right? The goal was one integrated product, not best of breed. They decided to go with SAP. It's a German-based product, really good in the finance, but it was built for manufacturing environments where people would have to use a punch in and punch out, like, the time clock. So they never had a footprint in higher ed. And as a result, we've been struggling for these last 13 years in getting that information, configuring, integrating it, right? Have they done, so up front it looked like it was going to be cheaper, but in the end, it ends up being more expensive. So you have to kind of look at the industry that you're in. So Salesforce.com is another good example. So we use it in admissions for graduate, right? But now we have this online MBA program and all of the, what they call student success. So it's the advisor component, and then what they call learning facilitators. It's kind of like a teacher as well as a TA wrapped up in one, right? And so they wanted a system to do that, and everybody was purporting Salesforce, right? But I delayed that until they came out with an educational data architecture to make it easier for higher ed, because how we define relationships and business and roles is a lot different than you would in a traditional manufacturing or other type of companies, right? You need things that kind of relate to our environment. And so in that case, we waited, and now we're using best of breed in that product. Takes a while to get my answer out, huh? I know. Other questions? Everybody still awake? All right, before we break, and I will break right now, anybody have great costume ideas for this weekend? What are you gonna dress up as? Oh, somebody must be dressing up. From Tiffany, among us. Huh?
That's a video game. That's a character from a video game.
Oh, I just learned something else. It's a character from a video game. The other day I learned rather than we're gonna crush or slam this test, we're gonna body it. So now that's part of my lingo. I didn't know what that was. I'm like, wow. All right, so, oh, come on, Mr. Brady. You must be dressing up. What are you dressing up as?
We don't actually have Halloween in New Zealand, so I mean, I wouldn't be dressing up, but I may find something. We'll see.
The worst costume I ever had. So this was back in college, and I had a girlfriend, and she was very into the arts and creative and stuff like that, right? So she could make costumes, and she decided she was going to be a toothbrush, and I was going to be toothpaste. Worst mistake in my life because, of course, everybody wanted to squeeze me, right? Oh, so let's squeeze the toothpaste tube. By the end of Halloween, I had bruises on my stomach. So my suggestion, if you're gonna dress up, again, be safe, eat a lot of candy, but please don't be a toothpaste tube. It's not worth it. All right, see you guys.
Take care, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.